Episode number 314, Shooting Talking Head and Testimony Videos with Grant Murphy and Alex Kendrick. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. You might be listening to me on iTunes or watching me on YouTube. Either way, if you can make it to our YouTube channel, we would love for you to subscribe to our 1230 Media channel for all the latest podcast episodes and video training and content and resources that we put out. So you can just search 1230 Media on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We would appreciate it. Today's show is brought to you by Church Voiceover, and if you're looking for high-quality voiceovers for your video projects, you can check out my friend Joe Szymanski. Joe is a valued member of our team and voices many movies, kids and student games, custom projects, and more. You can check him out at churchvoiceover.com. On today's show, it's a family episode as I welcome Grant Murphy from our 1230 Media team. Grant is one of our video producers and has produced literally hundreds of videos for our worship media library and custom clients. And today we're going to be talking all about talking head and testimony videos. We're going to walk through some very basic things as well as some advanced tips and tricks for shooting those types of videos at your church. You might be a church media guy that is responsible for shooting all the talking head, church announcement videos or testimony or baptism videos, things like that for your church. So we're going to give you some tips and tricks on all of that today, from what gear to use to how to light your subject, tips on audio recording, making your subject feel welcome, how to choose screen talent, and more. It's all today on the show. Also on today's show, a veteran church media guy who went from serving on a church staff to producing feature films, Alex Kendrick, will be here. You know Alex from the Kendrick Brothers movies, Fireproof, War Room, Courageous, Overcomer. Him and his brother Steven have a new documentary hitting theaters this week called Show Me the Father. And when we talk about how to shoot and craft testimony videos, this is a powerful example of that, as the film showcases several fathers and their stories, kind of a talking head or testimony style documentary. So the film hits theaters September the 10th. That's this week, and we'll be talking with Alex about how they shot the documentary, what to expect from the film, how you can support it, and more. Well, I have a lot of traveling coming up. I'll be speaking this week at Experience Conference in Orlando. I'll also be at the Awana Child Discipleship Forum in Nashville and CFX, the Church Facilities Expo in Dallas later this month. Also, I have Kids Matter, the Kids Matter MegaCon convention, and SALT conference, both in Nashville in October. So if you are at any of those events, whether it be Experience Conference or the Awana Forum, CFX, MegaCon, or SALT, I would love to meet you. Feel free to come by our booth or drop us a line on our website. If you'll be around, you can email me, carl@1230.media. I would love for you to check out my workshops that I'll be speaking at these events, or I would love for you to just come by and say, hey, I would love to meet you and see what God is doing at your church. So I would love to see you in Nashville or in Dallas here over the next few months. So be sure to let me know if you are one of those and stop by. I'd love to say hey and meet you. All right, we'll jump right into my conversation with Grant Murphy right after this. Check this out. Hey guys, when it comes to producing media, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And while it's convenient to have a friend or someone from down the hall do your voiceover, so often the final result falls flat because, let's face it, most people just aren't experienced in acting natural in front of a microphone.
So here's a tip. Next time you need a quick VO, check out my friends at churchvoiceover.com, a new site with a selection of talented professional voiceover artists at ministry-friendly prices. Log on and see just how easy it is to pick your voice and get started. Mission-minded men, women, and even kids who are ready to team with you and create media that makes an impact. Check them out at churchvoiceover.com. That's churchvoiceover.com. Hey guys, today I welcome our very own Grant Murphy. Grant is an incredible video producer, editor, motion designer. He is one of our awesome video producers here at 1230 Media. Grant, thanks so much for hanging out, dude. Appreciate you.
No, thank you so much for having me, man. Appreciate you.
Dude, I have a cold today, so hopefully my voice will hang in there and I won't send the COVID over to St. Louis to you.
Yeah,
so.
Well, we appreciate that. I forgot my mask, so we'll have to get through it together. Huh?
That's right, buddy. Well, hey, before we get going, I just want to thank you. You've been with us for several years, and man, I remember when I first started our company, it was me for a while creating a lot of the video content. And then as we grew and expanded and exploded, guys like you came on and you were one of the first, and you've given me a life back and time with my family and everything.
Awesome.
So man, thank you so much for all that you do for 1230, and your work is amazing, and people can go online and see that through our sample library and stuff like that. So just want to thank you for your incredible work.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you for letting me, or trusting me to, design and, be creative with you, man. It's awesome to be working with you.
Thank you so much, buddy. Well, as we get started, give me a little bit of your background. So let's dive into that. Give me a little bit, maybe your ministry background, and then how you got into video production.
Yeah, so I've been, I started going to church in 2012, baptized in 2014. So not a terribly long amount of time. I say that it's been almost 10 years we've been really involved in church, but I still feel like I have a ton to learn. So in the process of, going to church and kind of serving and finding a fit there, what can I do? What can I do to help the church out? I started to slowly find that it's like I have these God-given talents, such as video production, working with woodworking. There's opportunities at the church to help build stuff, and also being a part of the worship team. I play, drums and bass as well. So being able to use those passions to kind of get into the ministry world as far as helping the church or worship or doing video production, just kind of using those God-given talents, like I said, to, help minister to people and just use my passions. That's kind of how it all started. It was just a great blending of two things coming together.
So you have a lot of skills in the motion design arena, video editing, but you also do a ton of shooting. You and your wife, have a company that goes out and shoot stuff with clients, and so give me a little bit about that, and maybe some of your shooting experience and some of just the opportunities that God has given you over the last few years.
Yeah, so we started our business in 2018. It's 257 North is the name of our business. It's actually after 2 Corinthians. It's the we live by faith, not by sight. That's what our business is named off of, because God has everything under control. We just can't be like, let's jump into this and, it should work as a calculated risk. We trust in God 100%. So with that, we've been kind of going into business head first and kind of figuring stuff out as we go, and then just work. I always say God is like our account manager, because he's always sending us a new lead out of nowhere. So, and it could be anything from, a talking head. We worked with franchise chains here in St. Louis as a barbershop. We've done stuff for people that have worked with HGTV before, these massive 3-4 day long shoots. We've done a lot of testimonials, talking heads kind of stuff, and they all differ from each other. They all have their own quirks and features. The talent is always a little different, and everybody's needs and wants are different. And we just try to facilitate, navigate, as far as how we can deliver on that.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of, tech guys listening, video guys at churches. Probably lean, and I just came off of a church filmmaking conference. So church filmmakers are definitely out there making more content for churches. But I think the vast majority are probably on a day-to-day, weekly basis are probably doing a lot of testimony videos, interview type styles, telling stories of life change in their church, announcement videos, that kind of thing. And so in addition to creating films or things like that. So let me ask you this question. How do I determine whether I should shoot videos by myself if I'm on staff at a church? How do I determine whether I should shoot that or I should explore outsourcing that at the risk of us both sounding self-serving? How do I determine that?
Yeah, so I'm always going to err on the side like you should just have us come out and let us deal with it, because there's so many different variables as far as, shooting and the time frame and the scheduling and just the editing process. But as far as if you're capable of doing something like that, we live in a generation where I call, pocket filming. You can just pull out your cell phone and you basically have just about everything you need. But it comes down to, if you're a church or a brand that's, looking to get a little more serious about stuff, to have a consistent message, having a more polished look is going to do some good in the long run. There's a lot of content out there, and there's a lot of fuzzy, out of focus, poorly lit video, and people see that and they're kind of gonna move on if they can't hear or see what's going on. So I think it's worth the investment to, put that into a good video production to kind of have that polished look. That way your message is coming across well, your video is coming across well, and there's less distractions, So, I mean, that's part of the battle. But, if it's like a Facebook Live kind of thing, or if it's a last minute, like, hey, I just want to throw this thing up real quick, then I think, doing it by yourself is perfectly fine. If it's a last minute, you can't seem to get the schedule down, or, it's time sensitive, Facebook Live or something shot on your phone real quick as a quick update, I think that's great. If it's something a little bit more serious, then I would probably lean towards a video production group.
I think you make a great point that if you're doing little updates, Facebook Lives, or even like morning devotionals, or things like that, a word from our pastor, we're so accepting of the iPhone video, the Zoom call at this point that stuff doesn't matter. I agree. I'm more talking about the well polished testimony video, the announcement video that needs to be well done for that everybody's going to see, that sort of thing. So all right, so if I'm going to shoot, so now let's just say that I've determined that I'm going to shoot this piece on my own. All right. Okay. So I'm a video guy at a church, and I'm going to shoot my own testimony video, my own announcement video, my own even let's say film, if that's the short film, if that's the case. All right. So, but we'll lean heavy on the talking head stuff, but let's get into shooting tips for video. If I'm going to shoot it on my own, let's get into some practical tips for how do I enhance those videos? How do I, what are some tips and tricks along the way? So let's start with gear. Okay. What gear do I need to have in my toolbox as I'm starting to move into more of those videos?
Well, you're talking to a video guy here, so I would say all of it. There's a thing called gear acquisition syndrome, and it's real. It's called gas. And you find you get the camera, then you got to have the lights, then you got to have the mic stands and the tripods and the sliders and the
Did
drones.
You just say you have
gimbals.
Gas?
Yeah, it's gear acquisition syndrome.
Okay, all right.
It's a real thing. So you find yourself collecting all these cameras and stuff. But if you want to get on a basic, foundation, a base foundation of what you need, generally, if you're just starting out, camera, tripod, microphone, but really more importantly is the willingness to learn. Because if you're just getting into this, you have to be able to want to learn and understand how everything kind of interacts with each other, the different variables of it. Then also some patience. You're going to need some patience to deal with, gear that doesn't always want to cooperate. Technologies can be kind of finicky sometimes. So having a little patience towards that as well. But, one light, doesn't have to be anything expensive. You can go for two if you really want to mess with it. A good camera. They have a lot of point and shoots. They have a lot of mirrorless cameras. They have little DSLRs like the one behind me, I believe on this side, so there's a ton of different options. and then also some creativity. Having creativity is a big one.
Is there a starting camera that you would suggest?
Oh boy, here we go. I could talk till we're blue in the face with this one. I think I'm a big fan of Canon. So any really DSLR mirrorless, Canon has really good autofocus on their camera. It's like super reliable. So we have a 6D DSLR, and it does pretty well. I'm a big fan of the Panasonic cameras. I have a GH4. It's time for an upgrade because it's several generations behind. And then also the Sony A7S series. Those are a little bit more expensive, but those are also fantastic quality. I mean, these cameras are shooting 4K at 60 frames a second, all the fancy production terms and all that kind of stuff for a pretty good price budget. If you're in a bit of a budget, I think those DSLRs will get you started.
Give me price. Let's talk about that, because that usually comes down to that. So give me a price range of how much minimum should I spend on a good camera, and then maybe my first pieces of my kit.
So you can get a full kit if you go on I'm a big fan of B&H. So B&H, you're getting a plug. B&H Photo and Video, we're based out of New York. They have a ton of different options. You can get bundles with SD cards, sometimes with microphones. They might, they'll bundle, depends what it is. But price wise, you're probably looking at right around $2,000, $3,000 if you get a Canon camera with their L series glass, which is their professional high-end glass. So it's very sharp, it's durable, it's waterproof. So if you have a lot of volunteers handling your equipment, having that more durable glass is going to help you in the long run, because you can drop that stuff and don't drop it. You can drop it and it'll just bounce off the ground and be perfectly fine. Don't ask me how I know that. So you're looking at like $2,500 with a card, the camera body itself, and then the lens, and then a couple extra accessories in there. So $25 to start.
So if I budget $3,000 to $4,000, that should get me started pretty good, you think?
For the camera. Just for the camera, yes.
All right. So now let's get into the kit things. So
Sure.
If I'm building my kit, give me what I need, and then give me some price range.
So if you're just starting out with one camera, you're going to need one tripod. And those can range anywhere between $100 and $5,000, and probably much higher than that. So usually $300-$400 on a tripod will get you started. You can get the cheaper ones for like $80, but you'll soon find that once you get better at your craft, you'll soon find that they don't pan very well. They can kind of have a little wobble to them. So it might be worth it to invest in a somewhat decent tripod, $300-$400. You'll need microphones. I'm a big fan of shotgun microphones. I have 2 wireless systems, so 4 body packs total. So I can record up to 4 people wirelessly at the same time. That probably costs about $800. The gold standard for wireless audio is Sennheiser, the G4 body packs. Those are about $1,600 for 2. So you're getting 4, the transmitter and the receiver. So you can record up to 2 people with those. Those are about $1,600. Shotgun microphones range a couple $100. You also need a computer. I'm a PC guy. I know a lot of people are flinching out there. There it is. So I built my own PCs so I can have control over how, because I use Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects, and they have kind of specific graphics cards that they use that they function better with. So I purposely built my computer for video editing. For my computer set up with, 2 24-inch monitors and, all the high-end gear, it's water cooled and all that kind of stuff. I think I spent like $4,500 on that. It's an 8-core processor, 16 threads and all that kind of stuff, and it does 100% fine. So you can get a laptop. If you don't want to get a desktop, you can get a laptop for about $3-4 grand. If you go with Apple, you're probably looking at $4 grand. PC about $3 grand. And then other support gear. If you want to get into sliders and the gimbals and all that kind of stuff, that'll be several $100s after that. Did I forget anything?
I don't think so. So if you look, I know that we're talking about a lot of stuff, right, and it could be overwhelming, but I think, if you're a pastor listening, if you're a church tech guy, think if you can scrounge up $10,000 or $15,000. Mm-hmm. Now I know that, for a small church, that might sound like a lot of money, but I would save up. I wouldn't, right, I would get by with what you got, but then I would definitely save up and do it.
Right.
do a car wash. Like, let's, I mean, I would save up or budget for it.
Yes.
All right. So that's gear. Let's get into lighting. And so just so you guys know, we're going to be talking about kind of elementary stuff. We're also going to be talking about, if you are a video guy at a church, some tips for you. So we're going to kind of jump in both of those places. All right. So let's talk about lighting. If I'm shooting a talking head for, let's say, my announcement video or pastor update, something like that, give me some lighting tips. How should I light them?
So the lighting it's its own art in itself. You can do a lot of stuff with lighting. You can invoke a certain mood or a certain tone with lighting, and it really is kind of shape shifting in how you want to project yourself on camera. So for a lot of like announcement videos or update videos, high key lighting, there's two different kinds of lighting. As far as I'm aware, there's high key and there's low key lighting. High key is like if you just went to a room and turned all the lights on, and then you're perfectly exposed, the background is well exposed. There's little contrast between the background and yourself. That's high key lighting. You can get away with just walking into a room and not having really any light here and just turn on the lights and start shooting. Low key is kind of what you see, or what I have here on my screen is more of a low key lighting. I'm in my basement here, so I'm working with what I got. But there's a contrast on the two sides of my face. One side of my face is lit better than the other side. This is a little bit more shadowy. The background has a lot of contrast in it and separates itself. The lights you see in the background here, like this side, and then I have a little light behind my camera over here on this side. I'm trying to get the sides right. Those are called practical lights. Those just invoke a little bit more mood, make it feel a little bit more warm and less set-like, I guess. It just has a little bit more depth to it. Low-key lighting is more for if you wanted to do a more intimate shoot. So if you're doing testimonials or anything like that about how somebody came to God, or something that's a little bit more of a story that has a little bit more dynamic to it. If you're just doing updates or announcements, high key would be great. And there's several different ways to light stuff, and we can kind of get to that if you want. But
yeah, hit me on maybe a basic 3-point or
something. So yeah, there's 3-point lighting, there's 2-point lighting. You can get away with one light, which I have here, and that's called Rembrandt Lighting. He's an artist from way back in the day, Rembrandt. Somebody look that up. So I have one light on this side of me. You can do 2-point lighting, so you can set your camera up, and then you have one light to the right at 45 degrees and another light to the left at 45 degrees. It's a 2-point lighting. And then you can have a hair light, which is in the background, and that'll shoot just at the back of somebody's head, and that will provide a little bit more separation and kind of cast a halo on the back of their head for a little bit more separation. You can do overhead lights. I've seen a lot of shoots where people have one big dome on top of somebody that just pours out a lot of light on them and just pretty much blacks out the background. That's another way to do it as well. So a few different ways, and you could do, you could add lights in the back if you want to highlight a prop or something like that as well.
Okay. All right. So let's get into audio. And first, let me ask you this. And we've talked about this on the podcast some and through blogs and stuff. Bad audio means a bad video. Would you agree? And talk to me about that.
Well, there's two parts of a video. You could have bad video, and I think you could get away with bad quality video because you don't necessarily need to see what's going on unless somebody's demonstrating how a product works or something critical that you need to see. But if the audio is bad, you can't hear the message, and we're here for the content. If I can't hear the sermon, I'm going to tell you 3 ways how God can impact your life, and half the time it's like I don't know, like you're losing out on an audience, and you could be you can't really impact people. They can't hear what you're saying. So yeah, I think audio is more the important side of things than the video side. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get into that. How give me some tips on how I should mic up my pastor. You said you're more of a fan of a shotgun mic or a boom mic over a lapel or a lav. Give me your reasoning there.
So I use a less than expensive set. Because I have 2 of them and they work pretty well for the most part. But there have been times where the audio has cut out, and then I have to be like, hey, we had a technical glitch here. Let's just retake that part. That takes time. People get frustrated with that, especially if they're really trying to get a shot together. If they're trying to put a script together and it's going well. And then the audio cuts out. I'm like, hey, we got to redo that stuff. Normally I reshoot stuff twice anyway. Just if there's anything I didn't notice, I usually shoot stuff twice. But for pastor, I'll throw on a lapel mic and it's always been pretty good. But if we're doing a lot of people, so a lot of testimonial videos where we'll have different people, 3, 4, 5 people share their story, a boom mic is going to be way faster because they can just sit down and I don't have to get a mic on anybody. And plus clothing styles are a lot different, between the new trends of clothing and whatnot these days. So trying to put a lapel mic on, a woman's blouse or something that might be a little bit looser fabric, or there's nowhere to put a mic on there, and then you have to put the body pack somewhere. That makes it kind of difficult. So the shotgun mic just kind of eliminates all that, and then I don't have to touch anybody either. I don't have to be in somebody's shirt trying to put a mic in there, and I'm breathing on their neck and stuff. I want to try to avoid that and be efficient about it, and not be touching everybody. So a shotgun mic is best, and it also almost guarantees no audio cutout unless the cable, is broken. But, usually that has never been a problem.
Good points. Okay. Shooting. Let's get into shooting tips. Should I record one angle? I know we talked about, getting your camera, but on testimonies, on announcements, give me the advantages, disadvantages of shooting one angle, two angles. Kind of walk me through that.
Yeah. So with talking heads, especially for people that aren't used to being on camera, I think it's best to do 2 cameras because that gives you the flexibility of doing more seamless cuts. So they could tell one part of their story, and then they could mess up, or they could just go on for a long time through all the details. Some people are natural talkers, so they will want to tell you, it's like, well, I was at Target this one day. I think it's at 3:00. I was in the 3rd parking spot. We need to cut all that out just to kind of get more to the point. They have to go through their storytelling process in order to get everything out. But with 2 cameras, it makes it a lot easier to cut back and forth between those more obvious cuts, places where we have to cut out chunks or get more creative with how, if they mess up or something and a weird part, we can kind of get away with that with a camera or a 2-camera shoot. If you shoot 1 camera, my suggestion would be to shoot 4K if you have the capabilities.
Yep.
4K, you can deliver in 1920 by 1080, which is full HD. 4K is 4 times bigger than that. So you have a space this big, which you're delivering in, but 4K is this big. So you can shrink 4K down to fit that window that you're going to be putting online. And then if you want to blow it up to make somebody bigger without losing any loss, you can do that. And that almost replicates having 2 cameras. So you can digitally punch in and punch out during, with your cuts without having any noticeable loss of quality.
Great point. Yeah. Yes, you could shoot. I usually would shoot 2 takes as well, so that maybe not a testimony, but definitely like an announcement video. Shoot 2 takes, so you have the 4K plus a different angle if you needed it.
Right, exactly.
So you have all that. Okay, that was a very, very good point. Are you a fan of? I'm probably a little bit more old school, unless it's a very specific YouTube style video. I am, and you alluded to this, I'm probably more of a fan of cutting to a different angle, punching in or covering the edit as opposed to the head bob, cuts.
I guess we're both old.
Give me your take on that.
I guess we're both old, man, because I like my videos to have a seamless, like it was taken in one cut. We could have shot the thing 6, 7, 8 times, but it's going to look like it was shot once because how smooth the edits going back and forth, like you said, between cameras or punching in and out. There has been a lot of, tolerance with, the cutting, and then people look like they're moving like robots all the time. Again, there's tolerance for that, but that's not what professionals do. If you want a high-end product, then, that's what we are here for. If you just want stuff cut all over the place and you sound like a robot at every word, basically, then that's fine too. But I'm not necessarily a fan of that. It works for YouTube, but maybe not for corporate video.
I would agree with you. Okay, we talked about. Let's hit on this: framing your shot. So if I'm shooting in 4K, I can get wider. And then punch in if I need to. But do you have any suggestions on framing? Should I definitely be head to toe? Should I be waist up on announcements or testimonies? Walk me through that.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of. So for your wide shot, you can probably get away with waist up. there's nothing really below the waist that we need to, unless it's a tap dancing tutorial or something like that, or, this is how I came to Jesus through tap dancing. It's like, I guess we can show your feet. We can allow that.
Which you've done, and you've been the talent for, right?
Yes, I'm a world champion tap dancer, 1999 through never. No, so I do not have coordinated feet. So having, I forgot what we're talking about. So waist up. So you're throwing me off here. So waist up is generally a good position to be in. I'm chest up. This is kind of a medium close. Close is going to be kind of pretty much your neck up to your head. This is more of a medium shot, and then I could get further back for a kind of a wider shot. That's generally a good starting point, and then you can kind of punch in between your waist up and then your chest up would be a good starting point. But I rarely never shoot, especially when somebody's sitting down. I never shoot, below the waist, especially if they're sitting down, because there's nothing that we need to see. If somebody's sitting down, there's really nothing happening. So it's just usually hands and also a tip that I see a lot even today, even with professionals, is that headroom is extremely important, and also lead room. So your headroom, so your headroom is the top of your head to the top of the frame. This is a good amount of headroom right here. For a lot of churches, I know they have these big jumbo screens and stuff, and these, kind of, for lack of a better word, hodgepodge systems. So the video doesn't exactly translate to full 16:9. Some of them are a different aspect ratio. It could be 16:10 or 21 or, something weird. So there's this thing called safety lines that goes around the box. It's basically a bounding box that does not go edge to edge. So I would recommend not having somebody's head here, because when you get it on the church's video system, their head could be up here by the time the video is done. So definitely leave a lot of room, leave a little bit more room than usual. And then you can always kind of punch in and adjust if needed. But this is the proper amount of headroom that you want between the frame and your head. Also lead room. There's a thing called rule of thirds. If you want to frame your shot, let's say, I rarely have people look into the camera unless it's an update or an announcement video. So if you're talking about a testimonial video or doing a story about church, it's kind of an interview style. You want to have the person turn, the camera is here in front, and you want to have somebody that you're looking at off to the side of the camera and have a conversation with that person instead of looking at the camera.
Yeah, and you're probably going to be, there you go. I was going to talk.
Right.
Or keep going.
So we'll be here, trying to talk, and trying to look at the camera and also look at the imaginary person over here to my left. So this is called the rule of thirds. I'm in the third portion of the screen. You have one section, another section here, and another section over here.
Right.
So that's the rule of thirds. You're basically cutting the screen in thirds, and you want to put your talent in that third position here. And this is also called lead room. So the amount of space between my face facing this way, that's your lead room. I've seen a lot of video people where they'll put their person on the wrong side of the third, and their lead room, the nose is here, the frame's here. And that's used in cinema to create tension and awkwardness. And then there could be something called a Dutch shot, where the camera is actually turned sideways, and you can have this very uncomfortable feeling. That when you have somebody right here on the edge of the frame, it creates a lot of weird, uncomfortable tensions, because there's a lot of frame that's not being used. And it's just a weird framing. So try to stick to the thirds, have a lot of lead room going this way, not this way. And then have that headroom adjusted correctly.
Great point. So I would say unless you know cinematography, unless you really have been in it a while, I would not experiment too much with your lead room. Right. I would wait until you have a little bit more experience and kind of know, okay, I'm doing this on purpose for this specific reason. I'm creating tension in my edit, or I'm whatever.
Exactly.
I would start with following the rules.
Yes.
Because that's pretty standard, and you might get in trouble of awkward edits, awkward frame shots. It might just come across awkward. So yeah, I'm with you there. Also, the lead room or the you were mentioning the headroom. I think that really applies in live production also, where and you mentioned this, where sometimes the safety lines on the camera doesn't necessarily translate to the screen. So I might need to leave a little bit more headroom in my camera, knowing that when it translates, the headroom is going to be correct.
Exactly.
Right. So, you might play with that in your room, or it's less the case with your camera. shooting it in an announcement video kind of setting. Wouldn't you agree? I would say your DSLR in a closed setting is gonna be correct.
Yes.
Live environment translating to the screen in the room might be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, yeah. So you're saying, so you're saying shoot a video on a DSLR camera and then you can pump it out to the sanctuary or the worship center.
Yeah.
And then you can have it play on the screens. But
yeah, I'm more saying like if I'm shooting a pre-produced video, I don't have to worry about that as much. In fact, if I need to give more headroom so that in the edit I can adjust that in post-production, whereas in the live environment you can't. So it's because it's live. So adjust accordingly.
Yeah, it's more of an adjustment thing, and every worship center is going to be different in how they have their systems set up. So I found with our church that there's about 10% more frame that's cut off on our video monitors. So when I'm in my editing system, I have to leave about 10% more room on the headroom because the guidelines in my editing system and in my cameras are correct. But when I put it on their system, it kind of crops it in just a little bit more. So I can have my headroom right. I could be kind of tight like this, but then the worship center is going to be like this, so I've had to kind of play with that. It's like, okay, I need to pull back a little bit more. And you can kind of, you can see if the church will allow you, you can throw it on their monitors and you can see like, how's our headroom, and then kind of adjust from there. But again, every system is different. You could be working with SD systems, that might have a weird crop to it, or just an odd ratio. So, but it differs.
Okay, let's roll back to testimony style videos. So if I'm bringing a talent in to sit down and they're going to share their story, give me some tips on this. Are there tricks that you have, like hitting record early, covering the record light with a piece of tape, like things like that, making them feel comfortable? Are there things like that, tricks of the trade that you use?
The majority of the tricks that I use are not really tricks. It's just being human, making somebody feel comfortable, because anybody that's, if we're using somebody out of the congregation or maybe a talent that's not used to being on camera, they're going to be a little nervous. They've kind of did the prep in the mirror, they're trying to get ready. They want to do a good job, but they're nervous. They see all the lights and the cameras and the microphones and the props and all the weird gear, the movement, the cables. There's a lot of stuff that they haven't probably seen before. So they're going to be nervous. So what I do, and I'm used to working by myself. A lot of jobs that I've had, I have to kind of work by myself. But even today, I work almost by myself for the majority of the time. So I've developed a talent to be able to set up and also entertain the client or entertain the talent. So I could talk to somebody. It's like, hey, how's your day going? And I'm over here fiddling with the camera and getting it set up, and then moving over here to get a light set up. And this is actually a great time to be like, hey, I'm almost done setting up here. Why don't you go ahead and have a seat there? And what this does, having them sit where they're going to sit, it acclimates them to all the lights and the cameras and all the moving parts and all that kind of stuff. And you're already engaged in a conversation with them. So this just kind of brings that comfort level and that tension down with all the gear that you have set up. Just talk to them, hey, how's it going? What's going on here? If you want to run through the questions with them as well, kind of where we're going to be going with the story, that's also a great way to do things as well. It's like, hey, here are the questions we're going to do. Why don't you take a look at these, or I can just read these to you. And then if you have any adjustments or you want to bring up anything, or if you have any suggestions, I'm all ears. And that way it prepares them to where we're going to be going. So they're not, when you ask the question for the first time cold, it's like, hey, so what happened at this point in your life? And like, where do I start? I don't know how to tell the story, because they weren't prepared for that maybe particular question. So that's one way to kind of get them more comfortable. Also, set up early. A lot of the times that I set up, they always show up earlier than they're supposed to. And, if you need to provide room for yourself, let's say you forgot a cable, or, something didn't go as planned, you have to deal with that. So having a little bit more leeway of time will allow you for that, because they usually show up early and you're still setting up. So show up early, get set up early, and that way you're not stressing out about it.
So when it comes to audio, give me some tips on maybe how to set your levels. Do you have any tips and tricks on that?
So yeah, so I'll usually have somebody sit down in a chair, especially if I'm still setting up. I'll just have them sit in the chair, and everybody has different, some people talk quiet, some people talk very loud. And to get that level set properly, most video people or sound people want to be like, hey, can I get a check? And you just say check, 1, 2, 3. And the problem with that is, for a lot of people that are not familiar with being in front of camera, their confidence is going to go way down because they don't know what they're doing. So they're going to be like, check, 1, 2. I don't know what I'm doing. Check, 1, 2. Is that good? So, but a lot of people don't realize is that voice that they're using, the check, 1, 2, that's not their real talking voice. So what I do, I have them sit down and I won't even tell them that I'm checking levels. So I'm like, I'll be behind the camera. If I have my boom mic plugged in or whatever, I won't even tell them I'm checking levels. I'm like, hey, the one I like to use, and for this purpose, I like to use, what did you have for breakfast? Because a lot of shoots are in the middle of the day or towards, after hours, because a lot of people work. If you're using somebody from the congregation, they'll usually shoot after work, when they get off work. So it's probably towards 5 o'clock at this point. So by allowing them to go back in time to all the way to breakfast time, they forget all the cameras and all the lights, and then they'll remember. And it's just like, oh yeah, I had a Pop-Tart with some mayonnaise on it, and it was amazing, and this was awesome, and that's their real talking voice because they remembered. Their real talking voice comes out, and I can just check their levels. I'm like, well, what do you like about Pop-Tarts? They're like, oh, you don't like Pop-Tarts, man? So now all of a sudden they're excited about what, because they're talking about their breakfast, which nobody ever asked, what'd you have for breakfast? So that gets their normal talking voice out, and you could use that to set the levels with.
With talking head pieces, do you use a teleprompter? Do you use did they memorize a script? What are pros and cons of that?
So with talking head videos, again, if we're doing a testimonial, there's really no script involved. There's an outline that we stick to, and we'll ask questions in between. It's like, let's go to the next question. This is the next question. For me, I use a teleprompter. I think I'm pretty good at speaking with a teleprompter because I know where to put inflection points and pacing and all that kind of stuff, where it's a little bit more natural and conversational. Some people might notice, but it's efficient. With scripting, if you can memorize the script, awesome, because it comes off very conversational, a little more candid, and a little bit more organic. So I guess I'm okay with either one. As I'm getting older, my memory isn't as good as it used to be. Yeah. So, but either is fine. It just depends on what the person's comfortable with. If it's somebody talking about their business or their church, they probably won't need much of a script. If it's, somebody from the congregation, then maybe a script or a teleprompter would be useful. But I find a teleprompter with somebody that's unfamiliar with the teleprompter is going to sound like a robot. If you get somebody that's reading off a teleprompter for the first or second time, they're going to be like, hello there, church. My name is Sally. Welcome. We're glad you're here today, and we're going to have fun. Let's praise together. It's not going to sound organic or smooth. It's just going to sound like a robot. So I would usually push for a script on that one, and we can cut if need be.
What about props? Do you find props on talking head pieces especially valuable, distracting?
It depends what it is. The church I go to, White Flag Church in St. Louis here, our pastor did this Easter video where we did several interviews. It was really a question kind of thing. And our pastor brought out this crown of thorns as a prop, so to speak. And he placed it in front of everybody, and they had them hold it. And like, what do you think of this? What first comes to mind? That video was so impactful that people was holding this crown of thorns. I mean, there was tears, there was trembling, there was disbelief, there was goosebumps. A prop like that is monumental. And that helped really drive the story where we needed it to go and where we were trying to get it to go. And it worked very well. Other props, I've done videos where I've had snowballs thrown in my face. And I was catching, rolls of wrapping paper for presents and, fruitcakes and all that kind of stuff. If you want to go for a more fun video and the talent can handle that, trying to deliver a line and having a snowball thrown in your face at the same time and still having to deliver that line, then that's great. Now, if you're doing something a little different, if there's props in the background, then, that's fine too. But it just really depends. I mean, it depends where your props are going to be and how much value they have on the content or the message you're trying to get out.
Yeah, good. How do you select your talent? How do you find people that are good on screen?
I just go out into the lobby at our church and just point my finger somewhere, and that'll usually. No, yeah. Yeah, wind's going that way. That guy looks cool. He's wearing a jean jacket. Let's use him. So actually, with the whole, I know a lot of churches, they want somebody that's that looks trendy or something like that, or that might have a certain look to them. I try not to base talent off of looks, or like, hey, we need a black guy that wears skinny jeans and that looks hip or whatever. I try not to get into that realm.
Stop talking about yourself.
I just ordered a pair on Amazon. I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to get the skinny jeans. It's a whole different thing. So I try not to be based off of looks or biased off of looks or anything, or like a certain, aesthetic or whatever. It's usually somebody that has great energy or that's very charismatic, that can tell a story well, that's just naturally wanting to smile, that just exudes that energy and excitement towards stuff. Some people, they might have that energy, but they might be terrified on camera, and we might have to push them a little bit, because, they do a great job with, projecting, and they have a great character. So we'll just have to develop that on camera personality, and they're usually willing. Just got to kind of coach them a little bit on that. But
how do you feel about this? So say my pastor or pastors are not good on camera. They just don't deliver well. How important is it to try to make them better on camera, coach them up, or is it better that someone else deliver that content that is excellent on camera? Is it personality better, or to know their face, or what do you think?
Well, personalities, and with pastors, they have a bit of a different personality. They're more visionaries. They're very driven. They're used to doing a lot of stuff on their own, so they kind of have that mentality kind of baked in. It's like, I'm going to do this, but they're not doing a good job. So trying to combat those kind of personalities, those visionary personalities, can be difficult, but they are still people. So if they're not doing a good job, it's my job to be like, hey, that wasn't good. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and let's do 15 takes of the same terrible, run after run. We're not going to get you there. If I'm like, yeah, that was great, I'm sitting here like, how am I going to edit this together?
Yeah.
Or, this is going to be a mess. So just being honest, don't tear them down. Don't tear anybody down if they're not doing a good job. Use that positive reinforcement. Like, hey, you did this really well. You did this well, but you did this really weird thing with your hands. You had your finger in your nose the whole time. Like, let's maybe not do that, or let's maybe slow down, or, whatever the problem may be. It can be worked out, but you have to point them out. And you just have to be kind of blunt with them. And in my experience, when I'm doing my job, people really do look to the person behind the camera for guidance and support. This is our realm. This is our job. We, the people in the room, usually 2 or 3 people in the room, the person behind the camera wouldn't know the best, because at least they're looking at the camera. They can see what's going on. So usually a lot of people are pretty receptive, whether it's a pastor or a congregational member. They're usually pretty receptive to like, hey, how was that? They're looking for input. I will give positive input, and I will find something negative to say as well, so we can get that little blip out of the way. It doesn't have to be anything serious. But, it's like, hey, you talked too fast, or you messed up this word. You said a word funny. So let's try to do that again, and let's get that word out. You keep saying congregationals, something weird. So just smoothing stuff out like that helps, but just show some grace.
Does it help you as an editor? Like, I found when I was shooting talking head pieces that I'm probably editing in my mind a little bit to go, I need that line again. Yeah. Because I know that I'm going to have to edit here, right here to here.
So I do the same things. I'm editing in my head, even with people's inflection point. And I've noticed this over the years of how people inflect in their sentences, especially with women between men. And I'm not making this a women between men thing, but women do not end their sentences, period. It's just like, and so I found God. Like, that's a question mark, or that's not ended in a sentence. And then trying to cut from like, I found God. And like, I can't cut there. That's a weird place to cut. So I always try to coach anybody that inflects upwards towards the end of a sentence. It's like, hey, I need you to inflect downwards. I'm like, and I found God. That's how you end a sentence. Right. It's weird in an upswing than a downswing. A downswing is a natural end of a sentence. So women do that a lot because, they don't end a sentence. Men, they don't have enough of a sentence. Men are sometimes can be a few words. It's like, Yeah, my wife wanted me to come, so I came. And here we are. It's like, come on, man. Give me something more than that.
Give me more than that, bro.
I need more words, So, it's having a battle between men not talking enough and women talking too much and not ending the sentence can be kind of tricky in the editing. So I'm watching for those editing points and like, what can I use in that sentence? Will that work for the next cut? So I have to kind of coach people on how to inflect, or I'm like, hey, maybe fill the blanks in a little bit better. Yeah. Just something to watch out for.
On testimony videos, and we can kind of land here. So on testimony videos, do you have the moments where you know that something is gold? You're like, oh, I'm going to end on that. That is money.
Usually when I start crying. if you could make me cry, this is going to be a good video. I'm not a crier, but if I'm getting that kind of weepy feeling in my eyes, then yeah. And it's just, if the person's excitement is on point and they're like, yeah, so this church has really changed my life and I can't wait for Sunday again. Like, yes, that's it. And that was totally uncoached, unrehearsed. And like, that's great. We can edit here. And usually after that, I know that we got everything. Is when we just start talking. We're just having a conversation at that point because they're so comfortable. They're saying the right things. They're excited. They're just in the zone. And usually after that, we'll probably do like another 15 minutes of just talking after that. Cause their stories are interesting. And we'll just as camera people or interviewers, we'll ask follow-up questions with questions and it'll just turn into a conversation. I was like, yeah, I did the same thing when I got baptized. I was nervous, I almost drowned in the water, so we were just laughing at that point. And that's where I know when the interview is good, when we're just talking at that point, because we got so much great content. There's still more to extract from them. But
I like to keep the camera rolling.
Yeah.
When they come in and when they leave, keep it rolling, because one, you might be able to use them walking in and walking out. That might be something cool to use, or you might find a piece in there that I'm not saying that they thought that you weren't. Well, maybe they thought that you would stop recording, but maybe an unscripted moment that would be a good nugget for you to use.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Give us one last encouragement. Talk to the people who are shooting testimony and talking head videos. Maybe a last encouragement of the day.
I guess the last encouragement I would have is that nobody dies in this business. So if you mess something up, at the end of the day, everybody will be fine and survive. So don't be too hard on yourself if you dropped a camera or you had a bad take or a bad day. The best attitude to take from that is you should always be learning and always taking away a lesson from each thing you do. I'm still learning towards this, to this day. There's a lot of stuff that I haven't experienced to this day that I have to take away as lessons or things to watch out for in the future. So you have to be willing to learn. You got to be willing to take this as a life lesson because that's life. There's a lot of variables in video production and, things could go wrong. I pray that they don't, but they will go wrong occasionally. They'll come out of nowhere. Maybe your camera battery just malfunctioned and died. It's stuff you have to deal with. You got to have spare parts. I always have a ton of batteries on hand because I've learned that, batteries die or you didn't charge something the night before because you forgot because you're doing everything else, trying to script and prepare. So just be prepared, the willingness to learn a lesson in life in general is a good attitude to take. And you'll grow. You might not see the growth immediately. I've been doing this for 13 years and I'm still growing. You're going to grow and you're not going to see that growth right away, but you're going to learn and you're going to be applying those lessons that you learned in the video editing section and production or, on-set production. You're not going to realize it, that you're doing these things that you've learned in the past. So there is growth there. So pay attention to the growth, even if it's just a little things. Take the little wins as wins, take the big wins as wins, and try to focus on the positive.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you so much for this insight today and your encouragement and all you do at 1230. And man, you're a great friend and love having you around. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Hey guys, we are really excited about the launch of our new kids brand called 1230 Kids. It is a full website dedicated straight at children's pastors and leaders. We want to help you make Sunday happen in your kids' worship every weekend. We're providing an incredible ready-made media library packed with mini movies, games, countdowns, motion backgrounds, song videos with hand motions, editable graphics, and more. We're also providing custom media for kids' ministries and organizations. Did you know that we create custom graphics and video from multiple kids' ministries like Awana, Answers in Genesis, Seeds Family Worship, Doorpost Songs, Go Curriculum, Yancey, and more. We absolutely love serving the church through kids' ministries and organizations, and we would love to serve the kids' ministry at your church as well. You can tell your kids' pastor about us. We would really appreciate that. And you can check out 1230kids.com. That's 1230kids.com. 1230kids.com. Hey guys, today I welcome back Alex Kendrick. You know him from his films Fireproof, Courageous, War Room, Overcomer. His brand new documentary, Show Me the Father, opens in theaters September the 10th. Alex, welcome back, man. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, man. So, all right, not only one movie, but two movies coming out this fall, right? Tell me about them.
Two movies. So Show Me the Father, our first documentary, but it plays like a feature film, comes out September the 10th. All over North America and in a few other countries. Show Me the Father is 5 stories, and all of them will blow your mind. They are all true stories on father connections, some with good fathers, some with bad fathers, a couple of fathers were never there, and how they ended up viewing God as Heavenly Father. There are some twists in this film that are going to blow your mind. And the reason they're in this feature film, they're just jaw-dropping. And ultimately, I think it's going to be so inspirational about the role of father. All of us have a fatherhood story. Yeah. And I think by the end of this movie that you're going to find some hope, inspiration, maybe a little bit of healing in your heart. And we point to God as Heavenly Father and how we connect those dots, especially if we're struggling with our dad.
Now, this is more of a documentary style. How did that come about for you? Why did you choose a documentary?
To tell these 5 stories. Each of them last about 15, 20 minutes in the movie each. And to just let the people do the talking, show all the footage, the B-roll and everything. It worked best as a documentary film. Yeah. And again, the audiences that we've screened it for, there are audible gasps throughout the film. And I love that because these are some of the strongest father stories we have ever heard. We had to put it in this form. But again, it doesn't feel like a documentary. You're watching it and you're just riveted by it. So we love the way it turned out. We love the response we're already getting. And so again, Show Me the Father, September 10th in theaters all over North America. Our website, showmethefathermovie.com. You can find theaters near you and watch the trailer. And we hope people love it.
Did you guys have any delays or pushback because of the pandemic, or was it actually better doing a interview testimonial kind of style because of that, or how did that work out for you?
We were already working on this when COVID happened. And so since a documentary doesn't need an 85-member crew, right, and then all these different, sets and locations, we went to where the people were, interviewed them one at a time. So it was achievable that way and still just as powerful hearing their stories from the heart. And so we're grateful. We feel like the Lord put all that together for us where you just need 5 or 6 people in a crew. So we did all the protocols and checked for temperature and masks and everything when we shot it, but it came together so well. And then we shot a new ending to Courageous, also with a small crew, but we love these new scenes that we've added to Courageous, especially the ending. We're releasing it 2 weeks later. It's called Courageous Legacy, also in 1,000 theaters. And it's also a fatherhood focus, as you know, but we made this movie so much better, re-edited it, recolored it, added new effects, new shots, and a brand new ending with that happens 10 years later. You get to see all these characters age 10 years and find out what happened to them a decade later. So great fun to put that together. So Show Me the Father, September 10th, then Courageous Legacy, September 24th. You can go to courageousthemovie.com to find out more information about that one.
So I talked with Steven a few months ago, and you guys really put an expression of your dad in all your movies. I have done that. Tell me how that's been intentional, how you guys have done that, and then how you came to this.
There is a special place in our heart for fathers. Of course, we not just fathers, but that just has a tender place in our heart. Our father overcame so much, multiple sclerosis. He did not have a good father himself for most of his upbringing. His dad was 7 feet tall, alcoholic, absent most of the time, didn't know really how to affirm him or love him. So when my dad grew up, he became a Christian and said, I don't want all these things to follow me. Fear, insecurity, low self-esteem, alcoholism, infidelity, all those things. He gave his heart and life to Jesus Christ. And so when he got married and had the three of us, I'm the middle of the three sons, we didn't grow up seeing all that stuff. We grew up with a dad that was striving to love us. And then for him to get multiple sclerosis on top of that. And at first I questioned God, why are you allowing this to happen? He's honoring you. Why are you doing this? The ministry my dad had was multiplied many times over because he had MS. So many people came to him and said, if you can honor God and from a wheelchair, if you can build a Christian school from a wheelchair, I feel like I can do so much more for the Lord. And I saw what we see as a detriment and as something terrible, God used to amplify, magnify the impact my dad had. And so I see how God uses sometimes the hurdles we face in life for his glory. And so he's been an amazing father. And part of his story is in this movie as well.
And you guys, I know there was one of the films, I don't recall, where there was a father figure in a wheelchair or things like that. So you guys have really represented your dad well. In those films, and not only just the physical, but the spiritual as well, obviously, and that impact that he's made on you guys. All right. So speaking of fatherhood, why fatherhood? So you guys really deal with themes, marriage and prayer and identity. Why fatherhood? Why continue to push this theme?
You and I often will look at God and think of him as God, and we should, in those terms. We should more often think of him as our Heavenly Father. Jesus said, when you pray to our Heavenly Father, hallowed be your name. And we too often say, God, 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 when Scripture says over and over, Jesus says over and over, your Father knows what you need. Your Father sees you. Your Father will take care of you. Father means chief, source, provider, protector. And that's what God does for us. So he's not only God sitting on the throne. He wants a relationship with you. He doesn't want to just be distant way out there. He wants to be intimate in our hearts. And so we made this film. We talk about what an earthly father should be, how to forgive a dad who wasn't that, and then how to connect with a heavenly father that is perfect. And so Jesus said, when you think of the Father, you can look to me. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. All of the attributes you see in me, this love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, this compassion, and sometimes sternness, yes, when he's dealing with hypocrisy or whatever, but all of his good attributes are found in the Heavenly Father. And so this movie even broadened my perspective in the way I view God, not just as God, but as my Heavenly Father.
So you mentioned some of the stories a little bit, but who did you guys interview? Who do you want to give away? We got Tony Evans.
We got Tony Evans, who's amazing in this film. We have Sherman Smith, NFL quarterback, and not just quarterback, he's also a running back. We have Dylan McCullough, who was just on the St. Louis, I think, when they won their last Super Bowl. And then who else we have? We have Jim Daly, president of Focus on the Family. He has a riveting father story. And then we have my brother who adopted when we adopted his daughter from China, and the parallels there, that way God adopts us. And there are some twists in there that are just unbelievable. It's just mind blowing. Who else do we have? We have some other professional athletes that pop up here and there with thoughts. But I think when you see this movie, it's not just for men either, because everybody has a father story. I think you're going to relate to one or more of these stories.
Yeah, I was talking with Priscilla a few months ago at a conference, and just how excited she is about sharing Tony's story, and Stephen the same way. I think people are going to be are going to love it. All right, you mentioned Courageous a little bit. Let's get back into that one. So that's 2 weeks later. So this is kind of back to back for you guys. You mentioned this re-release, recolor, remastered. It's going to look great.
How'd you get the band back together? Kevin Downs and the crew back together to film some more?
Yep. So Ben Davies, TC Stallings, Ken Bevel, Kevin Downs, Robert Amaya, who plays Javier. He's the Snake Kings. That's one of the favorite scenes. And there's a callback. We shot a new scene with that I'm very, very excited about. So your favorite aspects of the original version are all still there. And then we re-edited it. We added drone shots. We added some new stuff we couldn't do 10 years ago. And we also are releasing it in its full resolution. Back then, a lot of theaters just needed 1080p or 2K. So we went back to the original 4K footage and remastered it, recolored it, did new sound, new score. And so I'm just so excited when we sit down and watch it now. It's such a better looking movie. And then to have these new scenes, I've never seen a film where the actors literally age 10 years over the course of the film. I'm not talking about makeup and CGI. I'm talking about literally age 10 years. When you watch this, by the end of the film, it'll jump 10 years. You get to see where everybody is now, and we add to the story. It's a very satisfying conclusion too. And so again, it just turned out so much better. If you want to see any version of Courageous, see this version.
Well, I bet as a director and editor too, you're like, man, I can dive back in and fix what that shot could be better and get a chance to make it great. What are some of the impact stories that you guys have seen over the years of Courageous? It's been 10 years now.
Man, not a week goes by that we don't get stories from somewhere around the world of fathers saying, when I saw this film, it gave me a clear picture of the standards I should have for my family. A lot of men saying that I made my kids the priority over my hobbies, hunting or some sports or whatever. I was spending more intentional time with my kids. A lot of men that accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. There were over 1,000 officers that watched it together in Panama. When it was over, they committed to the Lord and to their families to be the kind of men that they're supposed to be, honorable on the job, honorable at home as well. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. We've had people that have lost a child call us and say, this movie helped heal us watching Courageous. And it's just amazing what the Lord's done, more than we could have ever asked or imagined. And I can't wait to see what he does with this new version as well.
Absolutely. All right. Last question for you. You're talking to pastors, church leaders, tech guys, worship leaders, and you were a church media guy yourself on staff. Tell us, how can we help support you guys? How can we obviously take our volunteers and stuff like that? But what are maybe some assets, or you mentioned the website a little bit, but tell us the best ways that we can support you.
So for both of them, showmethefathermovie.com. And then for courageousthemovie.com, we have resources on those pages. Now, the resources are only there if someone wants to say, I want to understand more. I want to go deeper. I want to take these resources so we can do small group Bible studies, whatever you need. So they're not there just as products. They're there to use as tools, outreach. And so these movies are both good for families, for small groups, for churches to go. And then later, 3 months later, you can even rent them and show them in your churches and invite the community. But we first encourage you to see them on the big screen in a theater. The reason is, the more we put out these movies and that they do well, the more it says to Hollywood, these are the kind of things that we want to see, not just entertainment. We want something with redemption, transformation, something that's inspirational, that when we leave the theater, we're better than when we walked in. And so that's what's important to us. We want everyone to have a closer walk with God as a result of these projects. And so you can go to courageousthemovie.com, see the trailer, find a theater near you, and look at the resources available to you. And then, of course, showmethefathermovie.com as well for Show Me the Father documentary.
Awesome. Anything coming out next year? I mean, you got 2 big ones coming out in the fall. So, but I know that you're thinking about the future. Anything you want to spill the beans on yet?
Yeah, I will spill the beans on just saying we've already shot the next feature film that'll be in theaters next year, and we're editing that right now. Very excited about it. It's a true story. It's riveting, and can't wait for that to come out. That's all I'll say for the moment. Okay. But it's already shot, so we're editing it, and hopefully it'll come out soon next year.
Awesome. All right, again, guys, Show Me the Father is in theaters September 10th. Courageous Legacy will be in theaters a couple weeks later, September 24th. Alex, always a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Good to talk to you. God bless you.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out this week. Next week on the show, we will start a 3-part series sharing interviews that we did this summer at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. And the NRB is the largest gathering of Christian communicators in the world, spanning church media, radio, TV, print, podcasting, book publishers, and more. I've had the privilege of serving on the convention team since 2004, putting on that event, and it's always great fun to see and meet people in the industry through the NRB. And over the next few weeks, you'll be hearing from Dan Crystal from Thrive, the CEO of Faith Life, Bob Pritchett, Stephen Kendrick, Clint Lewis, and Tia Bowen from Gateway Church in Dallas, also author and pastor Mark DeMaz, and international worship leader Joshua Aaron from Israel. That's all coming up in the next few weeks on the podcast. If you like today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it if you would. We would really appreciate that. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest content and resources. Well, thanks so much for hanging out. Go out there and create some incredible worship experiences this weekend. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit MakingSundayHappen.com.